This is a Louie T Network exclusive.
Hey, either you're outside or you're
in the lab room.
Cut it, buddy. But me, you're me. Louie T, welcome. You are in the lab room, of course. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me on this In the Lab Room exclusive. And the NFL offseason can be a very long one, and we've talked about this before. And there are so many things that occur in the offseason that if you're one of those fans that just says, I'm going to put it down and I'll be back when the actual football starts to take place, well, you may have missed some things. And nobody wins or loses any games in the offseason, but you can improve your football team, or you can get worse as a football team during the offseason if you don't make the right moves. And so I've already talked about the best 7 moves made in the 2016 offseason. What about the 7 worst moves made this offseason in the National Football League? Let's start listing them. 7 worst moves made in the 2016 offseason. We start at number 7. The Falcons pass up on an opportunity to get a true number 2 wide receiver. Look, I've been losing confidence in Matt Ryan season after season after season since 2012, when they went all the way to the NFC Championship game and should have been in the Super Bowl. He's declined, his play has declined, and Roddy White has gotten older and older to the point now where he's no longer an Atlanta Falcon. Tony Gonzalez retired in 2013, and they have not been the same offensively since. Roddy White has now been moved on, and they really are lacking that true number 2 target. Julio has emerged as one of the best in the league at the receiver position, but he doesn't have a running mate currently in Atlanta. Now, maybe that guy is already in-house and they feel comfortable thinking that Justin Hardy, one of their selections in the 2015 NFL draft out of East Carolina, is going to be that guy. But I never looked at Justin Hardy as a number 2. I always thought that he was a 3rd option in this league at his best. And so I thought last year in the draft, they had a golden opportunity to select Tyler Boyd, wide receiver, out of pick. They selected Deion Jones with the 53rd pick. And look, I don't have a problem with Deion Jones. I love Deion Jones as a matter of fact. And I don't have a problem with them wanting to upgrade their defense. But that being said, I think offensively is where the Falcons are going to win football games. I don't think they're where they need to be defensively yet. And if you ask me, Matt Ryan needs more help. He needs to play better, but he also needs guys that are going to make plays. And I thought that Tyler Boyd, who was selected 2 picks after your Deion Jones pick by the Cincinnati Bengals, I thought could have been the perfect complement to Julio Jones. To me, I look at him and I see a 2.0 version of Roddy White. Doesn't possess the speed that Roddy White has, I will say that, but the hands, the route running ability, everything that you've gotten from Roddy White over the last decade and some change, you would have been able to get out of Tyler Boyd immediately. Not immediately, immediately. And he would have come in and really given this offense a shot in the arm. Instead, you're looking for check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Guess who? Mohamed Sanu to come in and be something that he's not. And that's a go-to number 2 target that's not in his DNA. And you'll find that out soon enough. And so I think the Falcons missed a golden opportunity to get themselves a legit number 2 wide receiver and bolster their offense and give them a shot in that tough NFC South division. You go to number 6. The Bengals allowing Hugh Jackson to walk. Now, you say to yourself, what are you talking about? Hugh Jackson was a coordinator. They already got a coach in Marvin Lewis. Look, I've been saying, first of all, I will never advocate for a guy to get fired. That's not my style. That's not what I do. But after watching Marvin Lewis year after year not get it done in the postseason, and after watching the debacle that was the wild card weekend loss to the Steelers last year, where his players just unraveled at the end of the ball game and basically gave the football game away to the Pittsburgh Steelers in some exhilarating television, I thought that was enough to say, you know what? You're not the guy for this job anymore. And guess what? We got the guy that's already here. You want to keep continuity. We know how important that is to Mike Brown. He doesn't really like to fire anybody. But the perfect opportunity was right there. That was the perfect scene and sequence of events to occur for him to say, you know what? You've done enough for this franchise. We appreciate you, Marvin Lewis, but it's time for you to exit stage left. the guy that's going to replace you, not only is he already here, but we think he's going to take this team to the next level in Hugh Jackson. Let's go ahead and promote him up from offensive coordinator to head coach, and we're going to keep this train moving. Andy Dalton's comfortable. He's comfortable with Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson is comfortable with Andy Dalton. I thought it was the perfect transition and segue, and I thought that game was the perfect time to make the move, and instead, the Cincinnati Bengals do what they do every offseason. They sat on their hands, allowed the best coordinator that they've had in quite some time that was qualified for that job to move on to a divisional rival, and they kept Marvin Lewis. Sometimes you just need a fresh voice at the helm, just like we saw in Indy when Tony Dungy was able to come there and win, and just like in Tampa Bay, when for years Tony Dungy was there and he couldn't get it done, and so they had to move on, and they got a guy in there in John Gruden who came in there and got him over the hump. Sometimes you just need another voice, and I thought that was an opportunity for them to do that, and they failed miserably. And so to me, that was one of the biggest offseason mistakes. Bengals coming in at number 6, allowing Hugh Jackson to walk and leave their organization. You go to number 5, the New York Football Giants spending big money on cornerback Janoris Jenkins in free agency. 5 years, $62.5 million, 28 of that guaranteed dollars for a guy that at his press conference came in and said, yeah, I gotta stop being lazy in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line. What? What? You gotta do what? You gotta stop doing what? When? That's winning time. Fourth quarter is winning time, and you gotta stop doing what during winning time? Stop being lazy. Doesn't sound like a dude that should be earning $28 million guaranteed. Doesn't sound like a dude who should be making roughly around $12 million per year. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. With that being said, though, they made the move. They knew they were going to lose Prince Amukamara on the free agent market. They needed a guy to come in and help them. That's the guy they selected. Got one of the better corners in free agency. But I'm going to tell you right now, all things that glitter are not gold. And what he appears to be may not be exactly what you're getting. You'll find that out the hard way. Thought the Giants over-invested in a guy that isn't as good as he is advertised to be. We're going to find out in due time if Janoris Jenkins is worth the money the Giants shelled out to him. But I think they made a monumental mistake. Giving that kind of player that kind of money doesn't seem right to me. As we move on to the number 4 biggest offseason mistake made. And it's the Redskins not signing Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal. This is the first time a quarterback has played under the franchise tag since 2004, way back when Drew Brees played under the franchise tag while the Chargers groomed Phillip Rivers as he was the guy in waiting to take over. And so this is a unique situation. The body of work isn't really there for Kirk Cousins, but this is the thing. The Redskins are in a lose-lose situation because either you give up the money that Kirk Cousins and more importantly, the market is going to dictate. We saw what Brock Osweiler did, and part of the reason the Redskins didn't want to give Kirk Cousins the money this year is because they looked over at what the Texans did and they said, what are you guys doing? They looked over at the Eagles and said, what are you doing? Okay, they gave a huge deal to Sam Bradford, and the Texans gave a huge deal to Brock Osweiler, threw the market off a little bit. So the Redskins were kind of caught off guard by how much money these quarterbacks were commanding. They should have understood what the value was for the quarterback position and understand that the market is huge for that position because not everyone has one of these guys that can win you ball games consistently in this league. And so the Redskins looked around and said, we're not comfortable with the price tag that these other teams are slinging around and the type of dough that they're giving out. So what we're going to do is we're going to slap you with this franchise tag and let's see if we can work out something. But if not, you'll just play under the franchise tag. And so to hear the deal that the Redskins offered and the highest that they went was $16 million per, which Sam Bradford is currently basically getting in Philadelphia, which you look at the year that Kirk Cousins had and the year that Sam Bradford had, and they don't really add up. And you look at what Brock Osweiler is getting, and you're saying, wait a minute, that's not even on par with what Osweiler is getting. And the $24 million guaranteed is a slap in the face for a position where, guys are getting 40 and 50 million guaranteed, and Kirk is getting 24 offered. I mean, that was a joke. So the way I look at it, it's a lose-lose situation for the Redskins, because if Kirk Cousins goes out and balls next year, let's just say 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, Redskins go 10-6, 9-7, make the playoffs. Let's say they get eliminated in the wild card weekend yet again, but they play a much tougher schedule this year. You're going to say to yourself, okay, he's the guy. Guess what you're going to have to do now? You're going to have to pony up. I mean, you're literally going to have to open up the wallet. And if you're Dan Snyder, you might even have to slide him a blank check and say, all right, write your number down and we'll sign it. Okay, that's what's going to happen. Or the other worst case scenario, or the other scenario is the worst case scenario, which is why this is a lose-lose for the Redskins, is that Kirk Cousins goes out, has a mediocre season, and you say to yourself, he's not the guy. And so the Redskins go out, play bad, and he plays bad, and the Redskins are bad again, and all of a sudden you're looking for a quarterback yet again. So it's not a really advantageous situation. To me, the smart thing to do was to sign him up, because I think he is the guy. I think you should know that by now. And you look at all the weapons that he has around him. Last year was no fluke. Kirk Cousins is the real deal. I think they understand that, and I think they just want to see it again, and I understand that, but at the same time, it's going to cost you a lot of money to see it one more time. And after he goes out and balls, because I fully expect him, go check the archives. I've been saying this for quite some time, that I thought Kirk Cousins was the real deal. They're going to find that out again in the 2016 season, and then they're going to have to break the bank for him. But again, that's not my issue. They should have done it. They didn't do it. Now they're going to have to pay more when that time comes next year. So we'll see what happens. Redskins missed an opportunity to get a deal on Kirk Cousins, because next year they're really going to have to pay if they want the services of Kirk Cousins in Washington yet again. You go to number 3 on this list. The Philadelphia Eagles' entire offseason has been a flat-out mess, okay? It's been an abject disaster since Chip Kelly has been booted out of Philadelphia. And you look at their offseason, and they come in at number 3. Their entire offseason has just been a mess. They're throwing money around as if there's no salary cap. There's going to be no ramifications for what they're doing. They give out 2 massive contracts to quarterbacks. You look at Sam Bradford and his 2-year, $35 million contract, which is basically $17.5 million per year, with 22 of that being guaranteed. And you say to yourself, what the hell did Sam Bradford do to deserve a contract like that? And then, to make matters worse, they go out and get Chase Daniel, who their new head coach comes in. Doug Peterson comes over from Kansas City and says, hey, I love this guy. I'm going to give him a chance to compete. Well, they're paying him borderline starter money, because it's a fringe starter money. It's not backup money, okay? 3 years, $21 million with 12 guaranteed is not typical backup money in this league. The Redskins signed Colt McCoy on a 3-year, $9 million deal. That's backup money, okay? 3 years, $21 million with 12 basically guaranteed. And if he starts some games, that could escalate to 16. That is fringe starter money, my friends. So you're investing a lot in 2 quarterbacks. And oh yeah, by the way, you traded up for Carson Wentz. So that's the guy that you know is going to be the future of this franchise. Yet you have a bunch of money divulged at the quarterback position. To me, that was sloppily done. Then you turn around and you give Fletcher Cox the deal of the century as a defensive. And I love Fletcher Cox. I think he's a phenomenal football player. But make no mistake about it, they paid him higher than Ndamukong Suh, which we know that's what a new salary cap and that's what the cap going up will do. It'll enhance deals. But did anybody see that coming? $63 million guaranteed for a guy that hasn't had a 10-sack season, that just had the best season of his career, which is what you want. You want a guy ascending. But again, that's a lot of money. $103 million contract over 6 years, $63 million of it guaranteed, the highest non-quarterback contract in terms of guaranteed money at the time. That was exceeded later on by Von Miller, but nonetheless, that's a lot of money. It was in line with the entire offseason of the Eagles just overspending on players. And then you turn around and you look at their draft, which was very unimpressive to me. I didn't love their draft at all, but anytime you get a quarterback that you think is the future of your franchise, I back off a little bit. But that draft was very unimpressive, to say the least. And so I just look at their entire offseason and I scratch my head and I say, what the hell are you guys doing in Philadelphia? What are you doing? That's the big question. to ask the Eagles as they come in at number 3 on the list of the 7 biggest offseason mistakes. You go to number 2. Carolina Panthers,
2.
A team that was in the Super Bowl a season ago, largely in part due to their defense, allows one of the biggest cogs in that defense to just walk away. And I thought the way that they handled the whole Josh Norman situation was very, very questionable at best. Their GM, Dave Gettleman, has always been a source of frustration for me. And I thought that he just went into full bully mode on this one. He didn't talk to Josh Norman, who wanted to be a Panther. Had he just sat down with Josh Norman and said, hey, get your agent out of the way for a second. Let's us sit down as men and talk about this thing. I think something could have been worked out, but he was hasty. He was very, to me, a little bit over aggressive. He was very, I think he was overzealous. And to me, I think he made a big mistake. And we're going to see if this cost this team or not. As at number 2, the Panthers rescinding the franchise tag on Josh Norman is a huge offseason mistake in my eyes. This guy was the quintessential cover 3, cover 4 cornerback in this league. A guy that was long, could make plays, and he gave that secondary some flexibility that they're going to lack next season because they didn't have anybody across from him last year. So the fact that he could essentially take away half of the field allowed them to do some things coverage-wise that allowed them to do some things up front and get pressure on the quarterback. Now you got to be a little bit more careful when you're throwing rookies out there and other guys that aren't as good. Now all of a sudden the entire field is open to the offensive coordinator who can get a little creative with the things that he wants to do and route combinations. All of a sudden now, the entire field is opened up. So I think the Panthers are going to regret this mistake. Now, is it going to cost them the entire division? No, I don't think that's the case. But it is going to bring them back down to earth and make them a lot easier to catch in that NFC South division. And I think it was a huge mistake on the part of Dave Gettleman, who I think was in his feelings and made a very rash and, to me, personal decision in rescinding the franchise tag from Josh Norman. You go to number 1. Don't tell me that you want to sign the big boys, and then when K1 Short says, okay, well, go ahead and hand me my money, you say, hey, hold on a minute, man. I don't want to pay you yet. So, look, thought it was a mistake then. I think it's a mistake now. We'll see as the season draws near. And the only team that could one up the Carolina Panthers was the team that beat them in the Super Bowl. The Denver Broncos comes in at number 1 of the worst all-season moves by undervaluing the quarterback position and allowing Brock Osweiler to walk. When's the last time you can remember a team winning the Super Bowl and then having a new quarterback and having to try to figure out some things on the run, essentially? It was the same Denver Broncos team back in '98 when John Elway hung it up and they had to start from scratch and they had to try to figure some things out, and it just doesn't happen very often. Normally you win a Super Bowl, the quarterback that won you the Super Bowl is back the next year and you're going on with business as usual. That's not the case for the Denver Broncos. They had a chance to keep a semblance of continuity offensively by getting Brock Osweiler back in the mix. And I understood that the big fish there was Von Miller. And ultimately, they may have done the right thing by not overpaying for Brock Osweiler, but you want to pay your own. You want to keep your guys in-house. You've been grooming Brock Osweiler to take over the throne in Denver for the last 3 or 4 seasons. The opportunity finally arises. He was a huge part of your run to the Super Bowl last year. Without him, you don't make it to the Super Bowl. You don't even make the postseason without Brock Osweiler coming in and steadying the ship last year. And so he was a huge part of your run. There were a little bit of hurt feelings there. Osweiler thought he should have had an opportunity to get things right and be the starter into the postseason. It didn't happen that way, and I didn't think he needed to be that guy. But either way, the opportunity was there for the Broncos to keep him in-house, and they just simply undervalued what it was going to take to keep Brock Osweiler on their football team. They let him hit the open market, and the Houston Texans simply outbidded them for his services. And so he's moved on. He really didn't want to be in the shadow of Peyton Manning or John Elway or any of those guys, but if they would have given him enough money, enough incentive to stay in Denver, I think he would have made that decision. Instead, they undervalued the quarterback position, and now they're dealing with Dirty Chaz, Mark Sanchez potentially, as their starter week 1 versus the Carolina Panthers on a Thursday night. Good luck with that one. We'll see how that goes. Now, ultimately, they were able to rebound. They got the guy that they wanted in the draft in Paxton Lynch. And so they probably got the future of the quarterback position already in-house now. But it's going to take a little while for him to get up to speed. And there's going to be a transition process that's going to have to take place before he's able to hit the field. So that phase that Paxton Lynch is going to have to go through with this defense who's ready to go, you don't have the type of time you would like. And look, that's a veteran defense that to me is in their prime right now. They don't have 2 years to waste waiting on Paxton Lynch to get his act together. Brock Osweiler would have been able to take over the reins. And with him being in the league for 3-4 years, him finally getting his feet wet last year, he would have been more in an advantageous position to step in and help this Broncos team right away. Instead, now you got a guy in Mark Sanchez who we've seen struggle in this exact role. Dirty Ches, not the guy you want starting. Trevor Siemian behind him, no NFL experience whatsoever. And the guy behind him, you don't want him to see the field, if at all possible, in 2016. So now you got a conundrum on your hands if you're the Denver Broncos, and it was created by you. So those are the 7 biggest NFL offseason mistakes. Quickly recapping. Falcons at number 7 passed up an opportunity to get a legit number 2 wide receiver. I thought Tyler Boyd in the 2nd round, sitting there for you to select, would have been the perfect choice. Instead, you go defense again. And so now the question begs, do you actually have a legit number 2 receiver on your roster? I don't think. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Guess who? Mohamed Sanu is that guy, and I'm not sure that your 2015 selection out of East Carolina is that selection either, is that guy. So we'll find out if Justin Hardy can step up. I don't think he's that guy either. 6, the Bengals allowed Hugh Jackson to walk. That was the perfect opportunity for them to relieve Marvin Lewis of his duties, hand him his pink slip, and promote from within, which they love to do in Cincinnati. Thought it was a great opportunity for them to do that. They didn't do it. They allowed Hugh Jackson to move on to Cleveland. Thought that was a mistake for the Bengals. Number 5, Giants spent huge money on free agent cornerback Janoris Jenkins, giving a guy who admitted that he's lazy in the 4th quarter $62.5 million, 28 of it guaranteed. Don't think that was a smart move. We'll find out if it was in fact a mistake or not. Redskins not signing Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal comes in at number 4. I think the Redskins missed an opportunity to ink a deal with a quarterback that was one of the hottest commodities at the end of the 2015 NFL season. And with all the talent around him, if guys stay healthy, it's going to be hard for him not to duplicate what he did last year, which is going to cost the Redskins even more money in the 2017 offseason. Eagles. Their entire offseason to me was a mess. It was a spending frenzy. None of it wise. Maybe with the exception of Fletcher Cox, who I think is an exceptional football player, but you overspend for 2 quarterbacks. Then you go out and you actually move up in the draft to get the quarterback of the future. So you're spending money at the position, yet you got a guy who you feel like is going to be the future, who's not even going to see the field most likely this year. Then you turn around, you give Fletcher Cox a huge deal with a bunch of guaranteed money. And really, because you have a new defense and you have a new defensive coordinator who's going to change Fletcher Cox's position, he would have been devalued next year when you would have had to give him a deal, and you would not have had to pay him as much because he was classified as a defensive end this year because of that 3-4 front. Now they're going to an even front, playing a 4-3, and that wide 9 under Jim Schwartz. He would have been classified as a defensive tackle. Now that price tag comes way down. It just would have been smarter to wait. Instead, they overpaid. Whatever. That's not my problem. And then finally, their draft, just very unimpressive to me. Didn't think they had any guys that really stood out in that draft class. But again, when you get the quarterback of the future, as they traded up to number 2 to get Carson Wentz, I really don't want to really beat your draft up too much. I just thought it was a very meh offseason for the Eagles. And then the Panthers rescinding Josh Norman's franchise tag comes in at number 2. Huge mistake on the part of the Carolina Panthers and their general manager, Dave Gettleman. Think he was hasty. He was very personal and in his feelings when he made this decision. And I think he's going to pay for this one. And this one's going to backfire in a major way as the Panthers get rid of an all-pro from a season ago and don't pay him the money that he probably deserved in Carolina. And then finally, the Denver
Number
Broncos come in
1.
as the team committing the worst offseason mistake by allowing their quarterback, Brock Osweiler, to test the free agent market and find greener pastures in Houston with the Texans. Yes, the Texans overpaid grossly, but the Broncos undervalued the quarterback position and now find themselves as the reigning Super Bowl defending champions in a very, very inauspicious situation with Dirty Chez, Mark Sanchez, potentially being their week 1 start. So those are the 7 biggest NFL offseason mistakes. I'd love to hear your opinions on those. Give me yours if you have any. And if it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything. National Football League training camp is basically upon us. We're going to put the offseason behind us and move on to some real NFL football. Are you ready for some football? I know you are. See you next time. There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie T, be sure to follow me on Twitter at InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In The Lab Room. That's In The Lab Room on Facebook and at In The Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.
In the